It's now 9:35. Time to talk high tech with Paul Brislen, twitter.com/Paul Brislen, also the head of Two Hands as well. Morning, Paul.
Morning, how are you?
Very, very good. Now, do you feel like a little part of your soul has been sold this week to the devil?
to the devil? No, not really. No, not my soul. Maybe some of my personal demography, but that's about it.
Some of your IP.
Some years, so yeah.
We are talking about the float of Facebook, their IPO, as it were, going public. There's so many different terminologies for this, but basically they've gone out to the public and say, hey, you can buy shares in Facebook.
Yes, $5 billion worth of shares in Facebook, and it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? There's always been lots and lots of talk about how will they actually make any money? What's the income stream? Will they float? Will it go the way of MySpace and Bebo and vanish as soon as somebody gives it some money? Here we are finally at a valuation of $5 billion just for the shares they're selling. Mark Zuckerberg will no doubt buy himself a jet in the not too distant future and have quite a good lifestyle, I'd imagine.
Now, I mean, obviously lots of users. In fact, 845 million monthly users.
That's right.
And there's some income there as well. Apparently, in 2011, their net income was 695 million. Significant, I suppose, but pales in comparison to, say, like Google.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is a massive company, and yet it's almost a minnow compared with the likes of Google or even Apple, for that matter. And it's quite nebulous as well, isn't it? I mean, if you think about what happened to MySpace, it's almost a ghost town now. Nobody goes there because we've all moved on.
Yeah.
There's nothing to really hold you to Facebook. Should Twitter get into bed with, I don't know, Microsoft and Google, and they make one big happy family and come out with Facebook 2.0, there's no reason to stay. You might just move. But it could also be that we've also reached the end of the line with these social media properties. Google Plus is still there. It's very much like Facebook in many respects. But it's just another version of the same thing, and I wonder how many people will continue to use it.
We're just rolling through some more stats because Facebook has been, because they've been a private company, they haven't had to release a lot of internal stats about how they work. But when they go public, they have to do this. Now, apparently, there were more than 100 billion friend connections on Facebook as of December the 31st. 2011. That's 100 billion friend connections, and the users generated an average of 2.7 billion likes and comments per day during 3 months ended December 31st. So there's a lot of activity.
There is a huge amount of activity, and people like me who are trapped into using it, even though we despise it intensely, predominantly because I've got family members overseas who don't use the internet these days. They just use Facebook. That is a major concern, that these customers are almost, by default caught up in the whirlpool, and you're dragged in, whether you want to or not, because there's no way around it.
So I wonder how we feel about this. The fact that, okay, so they provided the service, and they've enabled these friendships and connections and things to happen, and business to take place as well, but effectively at the same time, we're being sold, and the only return is using the service. So, on one hand, fair enough. One hand, maybe not so fair enough.
Well, that's right. You are getting exactly what you pay for. You pay nothing, and it's quite clear that a lot of people are happy to be using the service, little realizing that in fact they are the product. They are what's being sold. Facebook is the Facebook sells eyeballs to advertisers. It's an age-old model that the newspapers have used for years. And the way Facebook attracts the eyeballs to sell to the advertisers is to provide a warm and comfortable environment where you can share and you can put your photos and you can have applications and all the rest of it that goes with Facebook. And customers seem to quite like it. The people are quite happy to do that. My big fear, my big problem with Facebook is its privacy policy changes more often than I change my underwear. And being an American company, of course, there's absolutely nothing to stop the new owners of Facebook providing a direction to the company which says well, you've got all this lovely demographic data. You're really not making use of it. I've invested my money. Now you've got to actually start making returns on my investment. So let's see you selling some of these email addresses to the mailing lists. Thanks. And let's see you providing some form of advertising or some other form of demographic information to advertisers that I as a customer might not like.
Yeah.
And that's a real concern for me. So I minimise my use of Facebook at all costs.
Paul Brislen is with us talking technology. Talking about privacy, Google have just reconfigured their privacy, their fine print, essentially, because they've had a whole bunch of services, everything from YouTube to the calendar, to the documents, to the analytics, to the search engine, and they've brought everything under one umbrella, as far as I understand. Now, I've received a dozen emails from them saying, hey, this stuff is important, you should read it and stuff, but essentially I don't see myself ever removing my life from Google, so whatever they do, I'm just going to have to accept.
You'll just have to go with it, won't you? Yeah. And what they're doing, in effect, is a sort of a twofold strategy. They're aligning all of their various properties under the same privacy policy, because there was some variation. So you might sign up for Gmail under one policy, but you'll be using YouTube under another policy. So that's all been aligned. But also they're integrating it all. So you're giving them permission, in effect, to say, okay, I know that you've got a calendar appointment in an hour's time, but I also know that you are now in Warkworth instead of in central Auckland, so it will take you longer to get to that appointment. So I will move the alert further up so that you've got more time to travel to get to the appointment. This kind of thing is quite powerful, but it's got to be handled very carefully, because I may not want my calendar to know where I am at all times. I can think of nothing worse. There'll be no escape. And I like to keep parts of my life separate from other parts. So integrating it all together may not work for some people. But it is very good to see them going out of their way to tell everybody about it. But they are coming under a lot of flack for the decision to change all of this policy at this time.
Well, so previously on this program, we've said we welcome our Google overlords. Do we still stand by that?
Well, I'm a bit like you. I'm a bit stuck, because I use Google an awful lot, and I value it, and I'm happy to give it a certain amount of information about myself in the process, so that they get something from it. If that goes too much further, I won't be terribly impressed, and potentially could start scaling back my use of Google. But it's just too useful, and that's really the cunning point here. This is something newspapers have failed to understand, is what their business is. And for all too long now, for the last decade or more, the newspaper world has felt that it sells advertising to advertisers, and that the journalism gets in the way and is a cost to the business. But of course they're not selling advertising space. Otherwise you'd have magazines with nothing but ads in them, no content whatsoever, just advertising, and people would happily buy them. But that doesn't work. People want good, rich content, and people will go where there is good content. And I'm afraid Google's really got a lock on that at the moment. They've got the best search, they've got the mapping, Google Docs, Google Gmail. It's all starting to come together to be quite a portfolio of stuff that I can't live without, and that's putting them in quite a powerful position.
Finally, Paul, what's the latest on the Megaload story?
Well, so .com's back in court today. Kim is appealing the decision to remand him in custody. So this is a bail hearing, and he's in the High Court today in about 20 minutes in time, in fact, to say, look, I should be released. I'm not a flight risk. You've got all my passports. Everybody knows what I look like. New Zealand's a long way away. I would have to, steal a jet to get anywhere. So the odds of me fleeing the country are quite slim. That's underway today. Whether he gets it or not, home arrest. There seems to be some concern that his colleagues can't be placed on home detention because the cell phone network coverage out at Coatesville isn't good enough to allow the bracelets to work. So it becomes a bit of a problem. So we'll see how that pans out. It's the first step in a very long track before we get to extradition. One guy in the UK fought extradition for 7 years. I was reading today. So, settle in for the long haul. I think we'll be watching for a long time to come.
Talking about that case, there's the case of the teenager who set up TV Shack in the UK, and he's fighting extradition. I was watching the YouTube, the Google Plus Hangout with Obama, and that question actually came up. Someone put that question to him, and Obama, with all his charisma, sidestepped it and said, "Look, it's the Justice Department. I don't make these decisions," which is essentially true. But
Yes.
but it was nice to see him even being approached with that case and stuff like SOPA and PIPA and ACTA as well.
Yeah, I think there's a growing awareness at those kinds of levels that we're the voters. It's not the big companies who are the voters. We're the voters. And a lot of people really, really do care about this sort of thing. And if you're going to introduce laws like SOPA or PIPA, if you're going to make people into criminals for watching television, then, the world's turned a corner and things have got a little bit strange. And I think the politicians are realizing that perhaps it's probably time they backed off a little bit and got their acts together on this one.
Indeed. Paul Brislen on Twitter, twitter.com/Paul Brislen. Thanks very much.
Anytime.
It's now